Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
It is time for us to have some bookish fun with the Books That Make You show. Hello, I'm your host, Desiree Duffy, and today we're going to be talking about books that make you help older adults navigate life's challenges. As we get older, making decisions can become more and more daunting. We may have parents or grandparents, older relatives, aunts, uncles, or even older friends who need help navigating the various challenges that come up as we get older. As boomers get older, they probably need fewer people condescendingly telling them, "Okay, boomer," and more help from Gen X and millennials. Decisions about our homes, things like reverse mortgages, healthcare, assisted living options. These are all some of the big questions that are happening in our world today. And that's what we can help older adults and family and friends navigate. Our guest today has written a couple of different books that serve as guides to older adults. She is also philanthropically involved with organizations like the Older Adult Task Force, OATF, Optimistic People in Caring Atmosphere, OPICA, Adult Daycare Services, Team of Older Person Services, known as TOPS, MAPS Charities, helping seniors in Los Angeles County, Wise and Healthy Aging, which is a leader, trusted expert, premier service provider, and influential voice on aging, Alzheimer's Los Angeles. Woo, that's a mouthful. A lot of stuff going on. In addition to her support of these organizations, Toni stays connected to resources which are pivotal in providing vetted referrals to her clients and those clients of her peers. Toni has authored the book Should I Short Sale My Home? And in that, she offers helpful strategies to avoid foreclosure. Another book that Toni Patillo has authored, which is in alignment with supporting older adults to help them navigate life's difficult decisions, is The Inherited Home Guide. And this book specifically details the process, choices, and some of the roadblocks that occur when someone inherits a home from a loved one who has passed. There's a lot of hurdles to navigate, and this book is a great guide. Toni, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Desiree. How are you?
I am wonderful. My goodness, you have an impressive resume, and you're doing so much to help older adults. Congratulations. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you. It's my honor. It's my pleasure to be with you today. And, this is a real true passion for me. I spent many years caring for my mom, and thereafter, after her transition, then I shortly was contacted about my aging brother, who's 17 years older than I am, who was 17 years older. And he needed some very specific care. So, it just kind of was one of those things where I was the chosen one, if you would, and I took care of them. And at the same time, while doing my business, real estate business, I figured that I'm not the only one who's dealing with this. And I started doing some research and realized America's aging. America's aging, and we need support. And who better to help our community other than real estate professionals and a lot of other people who are going to be faced with this very same, these very same, I don't want to call them all challenges, because it's not all challenges. Some of it is very beautiful. It's a beautiful opportunity to be able to have role reversal with my mom.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, let's start this way. I want to find out more about your unique experience with your mom, because let's face it, boomers especially, that's a big generation. There's a lot of boomers, not so many Generation Xers. So between Gen X and millennials, we have to be prepared to help our parents and our grandparents too.
That's right. That's right.
Can you explain, just give us the lay of the land a little bit? Because it seems like as a nation right now, we're doing less and less for older adults. And it seems that like there are situations out there that are affecting them. Can you just, give us an overview of what's going on in the U.S. today?
Well, it is a huge, I would say a very vast subject. And I don't think that America has been trained to really and are prepared to deal with the whole aging generation. Now, because the boomers are one of the largest, the largest demographics that exist, everybody is 50 plus now. Okay, so their parents are all mature adults, all seniors, and many of them have transitioned and are still transitioning. So, the boomers are inheriting their things, if you would, but they're also inheriting the aspect of care. So I'm a boomer, and by default, I ended up as a caregiver with my parents. Now, not everybody. It's very interesting with all the different families because there's always one or two in the family that end up becoming that caregiver and in that role, if you would. But, there's so many different dynamics. It was so different with my mom than it was with my brother. My mother was aging gracefully. She was in her mid 80s. She was very lucid. She was very active until she started to have a little heart challenges. But for the most part, she was pretty much lucid all the way up until she was 93 when she made her transition. So her care was very general, if you would. It was general. And fortunately, I was able to keep my mom at home with me. And she did not have to go into a nursing home, or she didn't have to go to an assisted living community. And I just brought her home with me when she was in her early 80s. So it did involve a lot of the care aspects, getting her to the doctor, making sure her health was, in order. And as she started, let's face it, none of us are getting out of here alive. So as we age, certain things start shutting down, certain things start changing. Our skin changes, our hair changes, our body changes, everything starts shifting. And if you're lucky, you can, lucky enough to have had good health throughout your life, then maybe you're not dealing with some of the other terminal type of illnesses. Now, with my brother, like I say, it was a totally different experience. My brother was diagnosed at 74. First of all, he had a tumor. He had a tumor in his colon, and that led to colon cancer. And I had to relocate him, pack him up. He lived in Arizona. He had been married 3 times, and he had, children from each marriage. And all of those kids were grown and gone with their own children. So he was living in Arizona on his own. And, I got a phone call that something from one of his daughters who thought something is wrong here. Something's not right. He's not sounding normal. So my sister and I took it upon ourselves to drive to Arizona and surprise our brother for Father's Day. And when we got there, it's 120 degrees in Phoenix. And we didn't tell him we were coming. And we just knocked on the door. I saw his truck was in the driveway. And he's sitting in his place. He was surprised to see us, of course. He was happy to see us. But he's sitting in his place with no AC on.
Oh.
And it was just completely black in the house. Like all the shades were down. And, of course, I'm sure that was to keep the heat out. And he had a little teeny fan blowing. And I said, why are you in here at this 120 degree heat? And what's going on with your air? And he didn't seem to think there was anything wrong. He just thought it was as normal. So that was just one of the things. The second thing was his landlord, who he normally would take a check over to pay his rent. He actually took his paycheck over to give them his rent, but he took his whole paycheck to give them.
Whoa.
And that was a little out of whack. There were certain other things that he was doing. His cognitive abilities were definitely impacted.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first thing was first. I took him to the doctor. We had him do a colonoscopy. He never had a colonoscopy, and he was 74 years old. He'd never had one. And after looking at his medical records, it showed that they had suggested that he have one years prior, but it didn't show any record of a colonoscopy. So, of course, I made an immediate appointment. We went in, and next thing you know, he's got a huge tumor that has to be removed. And so I drove him to LA, moved him to LA with me. And that's where the next journey began for caregiving, right?
Right. And you bring up something really important there, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for us to be a little bit protective of the older people that we know, because if your brother was handing over his whole paycheck,
right?
Let's face it, there are people out there who are going to take advantage, and we have to look out. I know even with my mom, before she passed, we knew that she had taken out from the bank a big chunk of money. And that money was never accounted for when we look through her things afterwards. And we know there were situations where she would go hang out with her friends at the local restaurant and the local tavern. And we kind of think that somebody somewhere along the line either was gifted this money or somehow got it from her. And that's just sad. Yeah. So watching out for people like that is so important.
Yeah, some of the signs that I would say you really want to look out for is just their overall behavior as it relates to bill paying, as it relates to health care, going to the doctor, making sure that they're, really being watched over. It's really interesting because he had no idea what he was dealing with. And later, after the diagnosis of the cancer, he had, colon cancer. They gave him 6 months to live. Of course, we were able to get him 2.5, 3 more years of life. And that was because of the type of care that we implemented and surrounded ourselves with as far as resources were concerned. And just, tender loving care is a medicine itself. Mm-hmm. And it is very, very, very powerful when you can infuse just family love, And so we were very fortunate that we were able to keep our brother, with us, and that he was able to spend quality time with his family. Now, he later got the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Okay, so that was a whole nother level of care. That was a whole nother level of mental stuff that, there was a point where he didn't even remember my sister. He thought that she was a man that was living in the back room type of thing. Mm-hmm. And he would say, hey, the guy in the back room, he's really, really nice. He's been taking good care of me, and I really appreciate it. And I would say, Now, before I had gotten educated in this space, I would have probably corrected him, right? Mm-hmm. I would have probably said, no, Vaughn, that's not a man in the back room. That's your sister. Don't you remember Trish? But no, you don't do that when you're working with an Alzheimer's patient. You really just kind of let them flow,
Okay.
There's so many different things that I've learned from being affiliated with the Alzheimer's Association. And they're really, really good with education and with making sure that we're aware of the various things to look for and the resources that are there and available to us. So, my involvement with my mom and my brother, which were two completely different types of experiences, really, really enlightened me about the importance of our really tuning in to be mindful and to be, just really tapped into what their needs are.
Yes.
And we weren't taught this. This isn't something that we were schooled about when we went through college or even through high school, or nobody teaches you. It's like nobody teaches you how to have kids and raise a family, right?
Right, right. Well, and you have some colleagues too, some associates who have also written books. So
Yeah.
do you suggest, for example, to help people? Because you're right, we don't have formal education on this. There's
No.
no guide that we're given. But the book, for example, Elder Care Made Easy, and then I know Hank Dunn wrote the book, Hard Choices for Loving People. You want to talk about those a little bit?
Dr. Marion Summers. She's a very close colleague of mine, and she has worked very closely with me with my courses. I teach live courses as well for real estate professionals. But Dr. Marion has written a book filled with guidance that improves the quality of an elder's life. But the more important thing that she points out in her book is that the caregiver themselves need to make sure that they are taking care of themselves, because typically they're the ones who will get worn out, if you would, from the caregiving. Just transporting an elder, that's really important. I'm talking about physically transporting somebody from their bedroom to the bathroom. Let's say that they're not as mobile as they were in their younger years. So now they need to be helped to the restroom or helped to the living room, wherever it is. There's a certain technique and a certain way that they need to be transported. Just really tuning in to their body language and tuning into their eating habits and what's happening, just really being keyed into their behavior when you're caring for someone. Most of the time what happens is that people don't have plans for the future, and they get faced with decisions that they're not really prepared to make. So they are, constantly, this is a book that really kind of cues you in on the various different things that you should prepare for when you're caring for your loved one.
When we talk about these hard choices, one of the things that keeps popping up that I hope I can get your expertise on is reverse mortgages.
Yeah.
I even saw a commercial. I won't name the celebrity, but his spiel was, hey, I know you've heard some bad things about these, but trust me, I recommend reverse mortgages. Can you give us the lowdown? Good idea, bad idea? What should we know?
Well, what you should know is that reverse mortgages today are quite different than they were several years ago when they had sort of a black cloud over them. And, they have designed, the government has designed a product now that is really designed to support the senior. And they have a program that's called the Reverse Purchase HECM program. And the reverse purchase, the HECM is the home equity conversion mortgage. That's the acronym for the home equity conversion mortgage is HECM. And the HECM for purchase gives the senior the ability, if they have equity in their home, let's say they own the property outright 100%, they can literally do a HECM for purchase, and they can sell their home, and they can take the proceeds of that home, a portion of those proceeds, find another property that fits them and fits their lifestyle and their medical, whatever their health condition is, something that's more conducive to their current lifestyle, and they can put a payment down on that property. But the rest of their money, they can bank it or they can invest it and do whatever they want to do with it. But they don't ever have to make another mortgage payment. So they literally can sell the current home. Most people think, where am I going to go? If I sell my home, where am I going to go and how am I going to afford, the rate out here or the current prices here? But literally, you can tap into this HECM for purchase product that allows them to purchase a home and not have a mortgage payment.
So not such a bad thing anymore, I guess, is the bottom line.
There's a lot of regulations now in place that they may not have had before. And that's, the reason why it had such a black cloud in the past, in my opinion, is because the mortgage professionals that were providing a reverse mortgage, they were really taking advantage of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some really heavy fees, heavy fees. And so people were being taken advantage of through the fee side of things. And it got a bad rap. And then, it was all over the news. And of course, then everybody was like, man, no more reverse products, no more reverse mortgages. Don't do those. Those are bad for you. And then a lot of the myths had to do with people thinking that they would get a reverse mortgage, and then when they die, they lose the home. The home goes to the bank. And that's not what really happens. That's not what happens at all today. If you take out a reverse mortgage today, you have options at the time in which you die or move. If you move, you have to pay off that debt. If you pass, that debt has to be paid. But whoever the heirs are, or whoever, if they have a trust for it, hopefully they have a trust. If they don't have a trust, then it goes through the probate cycle. But the point is that there's a period of time that the bank allows you to sell the property, and you can pay off what's remaining on the property, and the difference would go to the family. The bank is not necessarily keeping it. Now,
Right.
If you get into a scenario where your home is upside down in value, and you still have this debt you have to pay, then the reverse mortgage bank will give you the opportunity to even do a short sale, okay? And they will allow you, they will take 95% of the value with that short sale. So there's all kind of different angles today that are available to consumers. But I think the most impressive, and my colleague Kent Copen, he's the reverse advisor. He's an author and a blogger who specializes in this whole lending space for older adults. And in his words, we help seniors overcome the struggle of not having enough cash or income. And that's typically the challenges that we're seeing today with the older adults. They all are, house rich and cash poor. And they're on fixed income. Okay. So many of them don't see any hope for themselves because they don't know that there are these products and these resources available to them.
And let's talk a little bit about short sales, because
Sure.
that's your expertise, or that's the topic of one of your books, as well as the Inherited Home Guide. So that's where this expertise comes in. Tell us a little bit more about short sales.
Well, the short sale is really where your value is lower than what you owe on the property. Let's say, for example, you owe $1 million on your property, and the value is only $750. So you go to sell your property, the buyer's only going to pay $750, but you really owe $1 million. So that means you're short that $150, right? Or $250, whatever it is. So when you do a short sale, the bank actually allows you to sell the property for less than what its value is, less than what you owe on it.
It's a win-win situation for everybody involved, for the person who's buying, who's going to get a fair value, and for the person selling, because they're underwater, but they're still going to make a sale, right?
Yeah, they're going to make a sale. Now, what was interesting in the past, the deficiency, the amount that was short, it used to be that you had to do a promissory note, and you had to pay that back over time. But when the market crashed back in 2007, the banks were starting to see more and more and more of these people who are underwater. So they developed a program that allowed them to, relieve them of the deficiency. So instead of them having to pay for the deficiency, they would write it off. In other words, you would get a short sale approval letter, and then that letter, they would tell you that you're being relieved of the deficiency and you will no longer be responsible for paying that. So, and from a tax perspective, the IRS was also able to relieve people from being taxed on the gift, because that deficiency now becomes like it's like you're receiving money, but you're not receiving money. and you're not having to pay taxes on that. So it gets a little bit complicated when you got people with various different scenarios and you got different banks with different guidelines. But to make it short and sweet, the short sale enables someone to get out of their house, sell their house, and be relieved from the bank from having to pay the deficiency of what it's short.
Exactly. And of course, that's why people should grab a copy of your book, because you can explain all those nuances. The book is called Should I Short Sale My Home? And then you also have the Inherited Home Guide.
Yes, and in the Inherited Home Guide, that is really a guide for families who inherit property that have no idea what the steps and stages are that they need to prepare for, or what they need to do. And this happens very frequently. I mean, there are people who, first of all, there's a distinction between probate and, a property that has been under a trust. And ideally, I recommend on a frequent basis for my clients, always get yourself in a trust, because with a trust, you can be the decision maker on what happens with your property, what happens with the proceeds, what happens with your overall estate, who's going to be responsible for managing the estate, who's going to be the executor, or who's going to be the administrator, who will be the beneficiaries, and how does that all get sorted out. All of those things are typically detailed out in a trust, and we highly suggest that people always get themselves in a trust, especially when they own real estate. Now, if they don't have a trust, and believe it or not, some ridiculous stat, it's like 90% of people do not have trust that own real estate. And it's a really sad thing, because when they make their transition, the property has to go through probate. The estate has to go through probate. And with probate, that's where the courts will decide how everything is divvied up, how things are managed, how things are dealt with. Okay. So, and that often costs a lot more money than it would cost you if you'd have invested in a trust, and then all of that stuff is all laid out for you. So that's, what we're seeing, and this is why the Inherited Home Guide is so powerful, because it literally lays out the details and the processes and the choices and some of the roadblocks that occur. I am involved with a client right now who had two trusts. There were two different trustees, and they had a domestic partner who passed several years prior to them. And I just have to tell you, it is gnarly. And I have seen, I can't tell you how many times we see families who split up because they're fighting, or somebody's disgruntled that they weren't included for something, and it just gets complicated. So, just imagine there's a gentleman who I'm referring to that had these two trusts. He actually assigned a successor trustee, but he never told the successor trustee that he was going to name him as the successor trustee.
Oh, whoops.
He didn't know this until he passed. This man passed, and then suddenly there was instructions for someone to deliver the trust documents over to this successor trustee. When he got the documents, he said, "What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know anything about this." And of course, he had to hire an attorney that could walk him through this process.
Yeah, well, your books do such a great job helping educate people. You do so many wonderful things to help people. Can you tell us where people can find your website, find out more information about your business, and as well find your books?
Oh, well, you can find my business online. It's ToniPatillo.com. That's TONI. P as in Peter, A, T as in Tom, I, LLO.com. So it's my first and last name.com. And the website is pretty, full. And you can reach me. My office line is 310-482-2035. That's 310-482-2035. And, for copies of the books, you can email us at info@tonipatillo.com. That's info@tonipatillo.com. ToniPatillo.com.
Excellent. Toni, this has been so informative. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you too for all of the work that you do with older adults, the organizations that you work with, and for helping people with this great information that we all need to have, because it's just a matter of time, whether it's us, our parents, our grandparents, somebody that we know. This is all good information to have. Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and hopefully I was able to help you a little bit.
Oh, you helped a lot. Thank you again. And thank you, everybody, for listening today. My name is Desiree Duffy, and this has been Books That Make You. You can find out more about us on our website. That's booksthatmakeyou.com. And we're on Facebook and Instagram as well. Until next time, please, all of my bookish buddies, enjoy the books that make you just who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.